webinar on AW pending payments. Jason's going to talk to us today about the payment process and what AW pending payments means. And so I'm just going to turn this right over to him. Jason, go ahead.
Sounds good. So, as Sharon said, oh, I got a horrible echo. What's the trick to fixing that?
Off.
Yeah, I don't have
Turn
any.
Your speakers off on your mic.
I think it's gone now. I think it's gone.
Better.
Good stuff. All right. So yes, we are going to be talking about AW pending payments today. So a quick overview of the things that we're going to cover. What is the ACEweb payment process? So what actually goes on when someone goes to make a payment with their credit card on ACEweb? So we're going to talk about what AW pending payments actually are, how they're built, so what causes an AW pending payment. We're going to tell you about what ACEweb INI settings can affect how those AW pending payments are actually created and saved. And then we're going to talk about how you can actually find those pending payments. There's multiple ways to do that, so we'll show you the tricks on finding them. And we're going to show you what to do if you're having trouble locating a payment, or if there's one that you're looking up and is in the payment gateway logs, but you can't find it in your system. We're going to show you how you can do that. And then we're also finally going to tell you on ways that you can hopefully reduce the amount of AW pending payments that you get. So an overview of the ACEweb payment process. So this is what happens when a person is making a credit card payment on ACEweb and you've got a redirect payment service. The first thing that they're going to do is leave the ACEweb site. So they're going to click that button to go to the actual payment service, to your payment gateway. What happens right at that point is ACEweb immediately saves the registration and the payment records in your database. And it's going to stamp AW pending into the registration note and the pay note fields. So once it creates those records, they've clicked the button to leave to the payment service. ACEweb has created those payment and registration records in your database. Control at that point is then switched from ACEweb to your actual payment gateway. We are no longer in control of what goes on at that point. You've left the ACEweb site and you're now on your payment gateway site. So at that point, ACEweb is now in a listening mode. It's waiting for a response from the payment gateway. It has sent out the payor to the payment gateway site, and it needs to hear back on what the status is of the payment, or what happened or what didn't happen. If a response is received, what ACEweb will do is remove that AW pending note from the registration and the payment records, and it marks it as successful or failed. Now, it's important to note here that a response can mean a number of different things. It could be a successful payment, which is, what you're hoping for. So you would get an authorization number and it would plug that into your database. Other responses could be things like the card was declined or the user clicked the cancel button. Those are all legitimate responses which will remove the AW pending status from that registration and payment. So what happens when ACEweb does not hear back from your payment gateway? That is going to be what leaves that AW pending payment in your system. So if it never gets a response, whether it was successful or failed or canceled or anything like that, then it's going to retain that AW pending record in your database. And again, once the user leaves the ACEweb site, ACEweb is just listening and waiting to hear back from your payment gateway. It's out of our control at that point. So let's talk about some of the ways that actually cause those AW pending payments to stick around. If the user bails out of the payment process, so if they close their browser window or shut their computer down and they've never clicked to actually even start the payment process to authorize their payment, that's one way that they could get that AW pending payment to stick. So if your payment provider does have a cancel button, that's something that you definitely want to have available for your user. A lot of people will be browsing around your site, adding courses to your cart, trying to get a total and seeing how much this will cost and so on and so forth. They may end up hitting that payment service button without knowing that that is going to start this process and take them out of your ACEweb site and to the actual payment gateway site. If that happens, and there's no cancel button, the next thing they'll probably try and do is to use their back button, which is usually going to mess things up even worse. So if your payment gateway does have a cancel button option, you definitely want to include that. Another way that these pending payments can stick around in your database is if they leave your ACEweb site and they never make it to the actual payment gateway site. So if the payment gateway site is down or it's not responding, this is another way that you can get one of those pending payments. Another way is if there's some sort of a failure. So partway through the payment process, something happens and their power goes out or the browser freezes. If they're not able to finish that payment or at least cancel it or get a response back to ACEweb, that could create an AW pending payment. The other way, and this is the final method, is if it reaches the timeout that is allocated for your particular payment gateway. I believe most of them, it's about 20 minutes or less, or 30 minutes or less. What we recommend is that you set that to an amount that is less than what your payment gateway supports. Or I'm sorry, you want your payment gateway to have a timeout less than ACEweb's timeout of about 30 minutes. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is the ACEweb INI setting called Void Pending Payments. What this does is it tells ACEweb how it's going to save those records when the user clicks that button to leave your ACEweb site and go to the payment gateway. So as soon as they click the payment gateway button, depending on your Void Pending Payment setting, this is what is actually going to occur with those registration and payment records. If you have it set to 0, and this is the default, I believe, your registrations and your payments are going to be active with AW pending in the pay note field. If you have this set to 1, your registrations are going to be active with AW pending in the registration note. Your payments are going to be voided with AW pending in the pay note. It's getting tricky to say. If you have it set to 2, registrations are going to be canceled with AW pending in the registration note, and then your payments again are going to be voided with AW pending in the payment note. For number 3, and this is the most intensive cleanup option for the Void Pending Payment setting, we are going to talk about what each of these settings does, how that's going to impact your day-to-day use of Student Manager and ACEweb. But for setting number 3, it's going to actually pre-delete the registrations and put AW pending in the registration note, and then it's going to void and delete the payments with AW pending in the pay note field. Now you're thinking this is kind of counterintuitive because the user just left the ACEweb site to go to the payment gateway and we've already deleted their registrations and their payments. What's going on here? Well, the reason for this is to help you clean up these AW pending records in the event that your payment gateway supports a feature that allows the information to be automatically sent back to your database when a successful payment authorization occurs. We'll talk more about that in a couple of slides, but for the most part, number 3 should only be set if your payment gateway supports some of those options, which we're going to talk about. Now, there's 2 different methods here. If you're on Fox Pro, if you're on the older version of Student Manager, again, you have the option, or the option is available for your records to be in a deleted status. With SQL, that is no longer the case. Anything deleted in SQL is permanently gone. So we've added an actual revoked flag that we check on those registration and payment records that is kind of similar to it being pre-deleted. Okay, so what do each of those settings mean, 0 through 3? For option 0, if a user leaves your ACEweb site and they go to try and make a payment and something occurs, this is what's going to happen when that AW pending record is still left in your database. Their registration is going to be a valid registration. It's going to be included in enrollment counts. Their registration is going to show up on rosters. The user, usually they're going to know if something didn't happen correctly and they didn't actually make the payment. If they even go back and try and make that payment, they can't add that course to their cart because ACEweb's going to say you're already in that class, which also means that their payment is a valid payment. It's not deleted and it's not voided. So that's going to take up that payment slot on the registration, which means they can't make any other payment attempts via ACEweb. So you can see how this option 0 can create some extra work for your staff, because if something goes wrong on that payment process, that eliminates the student's ability to actually take care and resolve the situation themselves. It's going to take staff intervention to get that squared away. So as we go up the scale here, this is going to increase the things that ACEweb does ahead of time to try and take care of some of this mess for you. So option 1, the registrations are still going to be valid, so they will be in enrollment counts and the person will show up in a roster. The user still can't come back and add the course to their cart because, again, they're already in that class, but they can go into their profile on ACEweb and go into their course history and click the payment status and be able to pay for that registration, which would then fully make that a valid registration and payment. So this option does give them the ability to go in and finish that payment if there was some kind of an issue during the payment process. For option 2, the registrations at this point are not included in your enrollment counts and rosters because, again, we are canceling the registration when you're setting void pending payments to 2. And so that leaves the ability for the user to come back later and add the course to their cart and to try and pay again. This only works if your staff members have not gone in via student manager and made any changes to that registration. So the updated by person on the registration record has to be www.web. And finally, option 3, this is the most thorough option. So your registrations and your payments are going to be pre-deleted and voided, which is going to give the person the ability to come back and re-add the course to their cart, try and make the payment. These people are not going to show up in your rosters. They're not going to tick the enrollment counts up on your courses. This is the most thorough method to handle payments that are non-legitimate payments. So someone accidentally left your ACEweb site, they got to the payment gateway site and they said, oops, I didn't mean to do that, let me hit my back button. If you have it set to option 3, and again, if your payment gateway supports some of the options that can accommodate this, this is the best method to resolve cleaning up any of those ACEweb pending payments. So how do we actually find those payments? One method is to specify in your preferences the ability to check for those every time you log into Student Manager. Now you'll notice that this is a preference that's listed in black text, which means it's user specific. So you can have one person in charge of this, or you can have multiple people in charge of this. It is set on a user by user basis. So what you do is you go into your preferences and you click the Pay tab, and then you'll see 2 checkboxes, show ACEweb pendings on startup and include void in ACEweb pendings. That's going to be dependent on which void pending payment ACEweb INI setting you have again. You check that, and then when you log in, it's going to check for any ACEweb pending payments. And if you need to go in there and resolve the issue or find out what happened, maybe make a call to the student to see if there was some sort of an error, or if they need to try and pay again, you can simply double click on their name, and that's going to open that name record. And then you can click the Edit Registration button and open the registration and then the payment from there. Now, if you're using void pending payments option number 3, again, this is the one that pre-deletes and pre-revokes. If you're using Visual Fox Pro, if you have the VFP version of Student Manager, it's not going to show you deleted records when you look at this ACEweb pendings on startup list. So for those, you'll actually need to use the Pay Grabber tool instead. Pay Grabber is a wonderful tool that you can access by hitting the F7 key, just from anywhere within Student Manager. It's going to bring up this green screen, and you can check the box that says payments flagged as ACEweb pending. And if you are using Visual Fox Pro again and you have void pending payments set to 3, you need to check the include deleted payments. This is the only way, if you're using void pending payments setting 3 and you have a Fox Pro database, this is the only way that you're going to be able to look those up, is with the Pay Grabber tool. If you're using the SQL version, then instead of having a show me deleted payments, you're going to see a payments flagged as revoked, which is kind of the SQL version of pre-deleted for these pending payments. So once you run that, it's going to return a list of the pending payments that it found based on your criteria. And if you have Void Pending Payments option 2, you can double-click the name to open the name record, and then click Edit Registration, and then click Payments to view those payments. Very similar to the checking on startup method. If you have Void Pending Payments set to 3, this is going to give you a different type of list in which you select the records that you want to undelete or unrevoke, and then you click Done. What that's going to do is remove that deleted or revoked flag from that registration record so that you can then look that up using your other normal methods. Now, after you close out of that screen that says which records do you want to undelete or unrevoke, it's going to ask you if you want to remove the remaining revoked registrations. So with SQL, this is your opportunity to clear out those revoked records that you're not worried about. Maybe these were legitimate accidents and they didn't mean to get to the payment gateway site, so you just want to clean that up. This is the option to do that, because again, you can't have deleted records in SQL, but you can have revoked registrations from pending payments if you've got this Void Pending Payments set to option 3. And then again, to do the cleanup in the FoxPro version, simply run the pack and reindex at some point, and then any records that are marked for deletion, including those registrations and payments, would then be permanently purged from the database. Now with SQL, you do have the ability to go to the actual registration records themselves. So if you're looking up a person and you know that they had trouble making a payment online and you've got your Void Pending Payments set to revoke records, so option 3, you can actually go to their name record, look up their registration, and as soon as you get to it, it's going to say, hey, this registration is marked as AW revoked. What do you want to do? Do you want to unmark it? Do you want to delete it? Or do you just want to leave it alone for now? So that gives you the opportunity to do that right from that screen there without having to use the checking for startup or the pay grabber tool. So what happens if you can't find an AW pending payment? So the first questions you want to ask is, if you're running FoxPro, did someone run a pack and reindex? If they have, then unfortunately any records marked for deletion would be gone. So if you have Void Pending Payment set to 3 and someone has ran a pack and reindex before you had the opportunity to check for and resolve pending payments, then those could be gone. Your next best bet would be if you had a backup that contained that deleted record in it. For SQL users, if someone has gone through that process and unrevoked the registrations or cleared it out using that pay grabber tool, that would be another reason that they may not show up any longer. So just make sure that your staff is all aware of the processes of handling revoked and pending registrations and what to do if they see this type of message. And this one does come up a lot. You may occasionally see a payment on your payment gateway report, so your batch report from your payment gateway, but you can't find that payment anywhere in Student Manager. One of the common reasons for this is someone paying for someone else's registration. Now, I would argue that the proper way to do this would be with proxy registration. So if you have someone that wants to create a registration and make a payment for a different person, then ideally proxy registration would be the way to go, because they would be the logged in user. Therefore, the logged in user's information is going to be what is sent to the payment gateway to stick on that payment record. If that's not the case and they are logged in as a student, but they're going to pay with somebody else's card, then you could have a mismatch of the name that's on the actual registration record versus the name that's on the actual payment record. So again, the person that's logged on when you're making that registration is that's the information that's getting sent to your payment service. Now, the form that exists before you leave the ACEweb site gives you the opportunity to change that information there. So it's best to do it here versus changing it when you get to the actual payment gateway site. And if you're still having trouble finding a particular payment, what we recommend is that you use that F7 pay grabber tool and you search for the payer's name, or you search for the registrant's name. Any additional information that you can provide, such as the date the payment was made on, will definitely narrow down your search results and make it a lot easier to find. If you don't have any luck, check the payments flagged as AW pending. If you're running Fox Pro, make sure you check the include deleted. If you're on SQL, check the payments flagged as revoked. That's going to give you all options for finding that payment record. So what are some of the ways that we can reduce these AW pending payments? Well, with every redirect service, once the user leaves the ACEweb site, ACEweb again is in a listening mode. So it's out of ACEweb's hands. It's in the hands of the payment gateway at that point. So if ACEweb never hears back, there's not a whole lot that we can do to prevent those payments from becoming permanent AW pending payments in your record. So here's some of the suggestions that we have that can help eliminate some of those. Now, when we talk about making changes to your payment service, this is something that we can't do for you. We can assist you. So if you can get your payment service representative on the phone and do a conference call, that's the ideal situation. So on your payment service page, and again, these are all very different, but if you have the options to create messages saying, don't hit your back button, don't leave the site before you complete the payment process, if you can put that in big, bold, red text, that's a good way to get people to pay attention and actually finish the payment process when they're on your gateway site. We talked about this before. If you have the opportunity to add a cancel button, definitely do that. This is one of the big reasons that AW pending payments get stuck in your system is people accidentally get to your gateway site and then there's no option to cancel. It's pretty much like you're here, now you have to pay regardless if you weren't done picking courses or if you got here by accident. Without having a cancel option, this is going to be a big generator for AW pending payments. Again, adjusting that timeout setting. So ACEweb is going to wait for about 30 minutes. So we recommend that you set your payment gateway timeout to be a little bit less. That way the timeout occurs and their gateway site will tell them, your time's up. I'm going to cancel this or send the cancellation information back to your database. And this is my favorite option here. This is the one that I was talking about earlier. Do they offer a silent post option? If they do, we definitely recommend that you enable it in your payment service and in ACEweb. And I'll also add that silent post is the only, void pending payments of 3 should only be used if your payment gateway supports a silent post option. Void pending payments of 3, remember, is the one that pre-deletes, pre-revokes those registrations and payments and pretty much erases all history of failed attempts to make a payment on your payment gateway site. So you only want to have that happen if your payment gateway supports what's called a silent post option. So what is silent post? Well, to better explain, some services like TouchNet and Official Payments will automatically take the user back to ACEweb once they actually complete their payment. So it's pretty much you put in your card information, you click authorize, and that's it. It's fire and forget. It authorizes the payment, and then they end up back on ACEweb. A lot of the other redirect services don't automatically do that. They require that you click this finish and return to your provider, or click here to finish your enrollment process. Those buttons are the ones that post the information back to ACEweb. Those are the ones that are the trickiest because it gives the person the opportunity to leave your ACEweb site, creating the AW pending records, legitimately process their payment, which means their card is being charged, money is going into your bank account, but if they don't click that finish this process button or finish enrollment, then the student manager database never hears about that, and so it's counting that record as being pending or illegitimate. And so that represents a real problem when people have their money taken, but they don't have the actual goods and resources to show for it. So again, if your payment gateway supports the option of silent post, what this does is it automatically sends legitimately authorized payments and failures back to your database as soon as the user clicks the button to authorize. So it doesn't require that the user click that button to return to ACEweb to post the information to the database. What happens is as soon as they actually authorize their card, that information is zapped behind the scenes back to your database, and it finishes up, removes the AW pending, puts in the authorization number, and makes everything well and good. The services that we know of right now that support Silent Post are Authorize.net, CashNet, CyberSource, PayPal, Payflow Link, again, TouchNet, Official Payments. Those ones kind of automatically do that already because as soon as they authorize it, it takes them back to ACEweb. But the ones, if you're using Authorize.net, CashNet, these services down here, make sure that you have that Silent Post option enabled. When you do that, it's going to give you the ability to set your void pending payment setting a little bit higher to take care of some of that cleanup process so that you're not spending a lot of time looking for and resolving AW pending payments when ACEweb could be doing that cleanup for you. So again, the payment service can only send the response to ACEweb if the user has their browser open on the payment services screen. If they close their browser or they go to Facebook or something like that, ACEweb is not going to receive that response. All right, so to recap, talk to your ACEware technician, tell them which payment gateway you use, and say, can we go over my settings? Can we find out if my gateway supports this? And then can we look at my ACEweb settings and make sure that I'm using the best settings available to me to try and eliminate some of those AW pending payments. Just said that. And again, if you don't have a gateway that supports some of these options, make sure you do have someone that is doing the startup checks, or you have some sort of a routine or a process to search for those pending payments and get those resolved. You could be missing out on registration income if you've got people that are getting to your site, but something is happening or occurring and they're not trying again because they can't. You need to know about those to be able to get that resolved. And that about wraps it up. Did we have any questions?
Well, Jason, I'm not seeing any questions from the group, and so I assume either you were extremely thorough and they are ready to move forward, or they've been taking notes and wanting to meet with their payment gateway rep or assigning someone to check these. Who knows what they're, just a minute. I think I see a question coming up here if I can pull that out.
I thought pretty thorough review there.
Yeah, we did get a lot of feedback at conference where people did have gateways that supported the Silent Post option, yet they were still battling pending payments on a daily basis, which if you've got the gateway that supports it, really those resources could be better spent doing other stuff rather than searching for payments that could be taken care of automatically by ACEweb.
Let's see, a couple of questions from Dan here. Double three, clicking on payment button has caused double payments tracked in Student Manager. I'm not in the past. Do you know anything about that, Jason? Double clicking?
So double clicking on a payment button has caused double payments tracked in SM in the past. And so if I'm understanding correctly, this could be something that's occurring on the payment gateway site where they've clicked the button to authorize their card and the site is probably saying, don't click back, don't click pay again. If they do post that information twice, then depending on your payment gateway and the settings, it could be posting two payment options, back for each time they click. That should be pretty rare. I honestly haven't heard of that occurring for a very long time. This was back before we even had the Silent Post options and things. So yeah, if you've got that occurring, then what you want to do is get with your technician and make sure you have the correct logging enabled on ACEweb, and then get some specific examples, and we'll go through line by line, find out exactly what happened and see what we can do to resolve it.
Okay, I'm not seeing other questions on this, so they may be making lists to talk with their techs and bring in their gateway provider, but that was very, very thorough, and you will have the slides to look back to. I'll wait just a little bit longer here and see if anyone else has a question. Yes, the copy of the presentation will be available as well as the audio. I see that question. It will be on our webinar archive page, hopefully as soon as tomorrow. not seeing any other questions right now. You still have a few couple minutes to type in if you'd like. Jason, if you can go to the next slide, we can share the webinar that will be coming up in September. We are going to be talking about the budget builder. Chuck, I think this is one of the very underused tools that we have. And so Chuck's going to give a real thorough overview of how to use that budget builder and determine your fees, your go, no-go decisions. You can look at profit and loss while you're taking registrations. It's a fantastic tool that I think maybe could be used a little bit more. What do you think, Chuck? You're going to be ready to make everybody budget builder experts?
And the crowd shouts amen. And the crowd shouts amen. And we'll also probably have time. We could hit a little bit of Pocket Ledger, and so we'll hit the budget builder, Pocket Ledger. And so if you're a money person, if you want to know the Jerry Maguire mode, where the show me the money, this is a place to be next month. So very good. Jason, excellent job with that. So I even learned something. So.
And so I'm seeing comments from some of you just sharing that you have really had some great views of the eclipse. We did too here. We were able to sit right out on the deck and have a good look. And I think Chuck got to a place where you could see it in totality. And I think everybody's ready to let that word go for a while until 2024.
Cool.
So anyway, thanks everybody for spending time with us. If you think of questions after the webinar, you know how to reach us and send us. We'll find an answer for you and get right back with you. But not seeing that, we'll let you get on with your day, and we will see you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Nice job. I don't know.